Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Faith Colas, Director of Advocacy, Outreach, and Community Affairs. On behalf of Dr. Eve Hall, CEO and President of the Greater Milwaukee Urban League, welcome to Conversation Wellness. This is a series that will inform you and keep you connected to the ongoing work of the Greater Milwaukee Urban League and the work of our community partners. The Conversation Wellness series is a part of our mission to address inequities and covers a wide range of topics, including but not limited to health, home ownership, employment, financial literacy, education, entrepreneurship, voter education, and family. Our goal is to empower communities and change lives. Before I begin introductions, let me remind you to mute your microphones. We will be recording today's series, so if you have to leave us for any reason or you want to share today's series or session with others, we will be posting today on our website, tmul.org, on our social media, and on our YouTube page. We will open the session for questions, which I ask for you to place in the chat. And you can do so at any time during the presentation of our guest. You may also place your question at the end of the presentation. So, without further ado, let me introduce to you our sponsor for today's Conversation Wellness, Kurt Heminger, Director of Marketing with Humana Eye Care. Kurt directs marketing and community partnerships for Eye Care, a wholly owned subsidiary of Humana. He joined Eye Care in April of 2017. He has over 14 years of insurance experience and has a journalism degree from the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. Kurt, thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Faith. Yes, that's true. I am with Humana. And as Faith mentioned, Eye Care is a subsidiary of Humana. So together, Humana and Eye Care are a health and wellness company. And a big area of our focus is on building relationships with community organizations like the Greater Milwaukee Urban League. So I've been fortunate enough to work with Faith, with Florida, with Zainab, Dr. Hall. And overall, the reason that we support great education like this opportunity is because at Humana, we want our members to have more healthy days. Well, that doesn't just happen. It doesn't happen on its own. Sometimes that means going to a doctor for medical needs, but it's not always medical. Sometimes that means going to a community-based organization for your social needs. And sometimes that just means taking care of yourself. It's such an important part of health that's too often overlooked. So many of us, all we seem to be able to do is focus on the needs of others, and we overlook our own needs. So we are big believers that self-care is a key ingredient to the recipe of better health. So thanks for including me. I'll turn it back over to Faith. Thank you very much. And I look forward to hearing the presentation with you all.
Thank you, Kurt. And we thank Humana Eye Care, your entire team, for your support of the Greater Milwaukee Urban League and our ongoing efforts to address inequities for empowering communities and changing lives. And now I'd like to introduce to you our special guest, Patrice Macbeth. Patrice Macbeth has spent 25 years in the field of social services. She is the author of Finding Your Path, Healing from the Effects of Trauma. She is a passionate community-based mental health professional who has worked with community agencies that serve women and men who have experienced violence, along with children in need of social, emotional support in Milwaukee and surrounding counties. Patrice is the owner and founder of Macbeth Consulting, LLC, where she provides therapy that leads with understanding, integrity, authenticity, warmth, and professionalism. Macbeth Consulting strives to make clients feel heard and validated. Patrice works as a trauma-informed therapist internationally, providing healing services to survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and trafficking within shelter-based settings as an outpatient therapist and through telehealth. She has a deep passion to work with survivors and those suffering with mental health concerns in society. Patrice also works with the Greater Milwaukee Urban League as a partner in our education department with our 9 partner schools. Patrice, welcome and thank you for joining us today. The virtual floor is all yours.
Hello, and thank you for having me. This is, to me, an amazing opportunity to be able to share just about mental health and self-care and how important it is for us as healers and workers in the community to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. So today our topic is self-care, burnout, understanding what burnout is. Next slide, please. So our learning agenda today are the things that we will be discussing. So the first on the agenda is what is burnout, how burnout occurs, what are the signs and symptoms of burnout, and what are the stages of burnout. I got to move us out the way because I have it. And how to overcome burnout. Next slide, please. So Faith did an amazing job introducing me. And so, as she said, my name is Patrice Macbeth. This one is really basic. I am a clinical mental health counselor, and I have worked within our city and internationally through outpatient and telehealth. And at Macbeth Consulting, we work with individuals and families, and we want to help promote healing and change from trauma. Next slide. So, and I like to be interactive. So in the chat, if you would light this chat up, and please tell me, what do you think burnout is? What is your perspective of burnout? I'm waiting to see the chats. People to respond in the chat. Being overwhelmed. Thank you, Crystal. Anyone else? When you pour from an empty cup. Absolutely. Too tired to even sleep or rest. That is real. Overly exhausted. Absolutely. And I love the one Faith put out is just even being too many hats. Yes. Apathy versus empathy. Great. Yes. All of the things, trying to handle it all. Thank you, Jackie. Yes, all of those are very accurate. And I love when Faith said, like, you're too tired to sleep. And for some people, they might think that that don't even make sense. Like, how can you be too tired and you're unable to sleep? But when we're talking about burnout, you're feeling all those things, everything that everyone put in the chat. We're talking about like being overwhelmed. So that means your mind is constantly running. It's constantly going, and it's not giving yourself an opportunity to even take the time to rest. Feeling guilty about saying no. Yes, 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 yes. That is so very true. And can you answer this, yes or no? Do you think burnout is a state of mind? Yes, okay. Let's move to the next slide to get the yes and physical. Thank you, Crystal. So the definition of burnout, according to the APA, Dictionary of Psychology, is defined as physical, emotional, or mental exhaustion, accompanied by a decreased motivation, lower performance, and negative attitudes towards oneself and others. Raise your hand in the chat if you've ever felt any of these ways. I know I can. I'm currently recovering. And I can be honest about where I'm at in my life. Yes. And so everything that you put in the chat about what burnout is exactly, it's defined by APA, the Psychological Dictionary. Yes, feel like my brain is exhausted. especially being in the nonprofit world, the helping field, you're constantly thinking, you're constantly moving. So burnout is so real. And we don't have these conversations enough because we continue to keep going. We never press the pause and we continue to move. And so burnout occurs. Next slide, please. And burnout is more than a state of mind. Burnout is worry, stress, anxiety, and all of this can build up over a long period of time. So and I love some of the things that everyone's saying, like just continuing to move, continuing to go. Those little things continue to build up, and it might not even be the last thing that knocks you off your square, but it could be just the build up of everything that you've been experiencing. And if we want to talk about it and keep it real, everything that we've been experiencing in this world since the pandemic, we've all experienced some form of loss. We've all experienced some form of stress or pressure. It has been rough. And then even living in our communities are not what they used to be. It's the violence and the drama and everything that we're seeing in our community. So that stuff alone also brings on worry, stress, and anxiety. And then it's to the point where we're no longer able to cope or to perform our normal daily tasks. So burnout is more than a state of mind. It occurs in our mind, but then it affects every other part of our being. Next slide, please. So burnout is more common than we think. A recent report found that employee burnout is on the rise. 50% of all workers are feeling burnt out. That's an increase of 9% of a pre-COVID survey that occurred. So workers are feeling this. Workers are feeling more strained. Workers are feeling more burnt out. And there are 4 different types of burnout. So with burnout, there can be number 1, boredom. On the fulfillment side. And when we talk about the burnout, the boredom piece, we're talking about, are you happy in your job? Are you not being challenged enough in your job? Is it something that you're just doing and you're going along with the flow? So that's the boredom piece. And then people become burnt out from that side of it. 2, feeling overwhelmed, the productivity side. So when you're constantly, all these tasks are coming at you. How do I deal with this stuff? I'm overwhelmed. It's too much hitting me at once. The physical side, being overly exhausted, because we know that in the nonprofit world, in the helping world, we are constantly on the go. Things are constantly moving and changing. So physically, our bodies get tired and they begin to shut down. Emotionally, that's the self-care side. And that's what we're focused on today. We're going to understand and learn how to build self-care. Next slide, please. How does burnout occur? Burnout is a form of exhaustion caused by constantly feeling overwhelmed. It's a result of excessive and prolonged emotional, physical, and mental stress. In many cases, burnout is related to one's job, but it's not limited to your job. When I say that it's not limited to your job, what do you think I'm talking about? Or what other areas could burnout occur in? Family obligations, absolutely. Can you move to the next slide, please? So here, this is where we're going to talk about the other types of burnouts. So yes, violence in our neighborhood. Any others? Reckless driving. Yes. What about in relationships? Is that one? Friends and family and significant others. Also, what about taking care of individuals in our family? Because that's a whole nother thing, especially with COVID being what it is. A lot of caregiving, absolutely. A lot of people have had to begin to care for family members, and that's a task. Personal time, relationship, building a legacy. Absolutely. Also, what about parental duties? That's another area that we can experience burnout in. And when I talk about acknowledging your feelings, because most of the time we continue to go, parental or small or adult children, absolutely, because adult children, it's a horse of a different color, right? Because with younger kids, we have control over their environments. We can kind of dictate what's going to happen in their lives. But when we have adult children, we don't have that control anymore. So the choices and decisions that they make is their own. And so, like, I always talk about how I had to learn how to lean out to lean back in parenting my adult children, because, that's a burnout city too, because you're just like, oh my goodness, I see them driving into this brick wall. I want to stop it. Please stop. But then you really have to kind of let them go so that they can learn those lessons on their own. And it's, yes, and it's important for us to acknowledge our feelings. Why do you think I'm saying it's important for you to acknowledge your feelings when you're experiencing these things? So you can face the realities. Because if we're constantly wearing a mask, we have to literally wear a mask, right? But if you're constantly wearing that mask and pretending like self-awareness, yes, Venus, thank you. Instead of pushing them down, stay with them until when you push them down. And I call that the soda can experience. So like if you have all of this stuff happening, but you don't do anything about it, what happens when you shake a soda up and you pop it open? It explodes everywhere. And then it explodes on things that it doesn't even need to be exploded on. So it's so important for us to acknowledge our feelings around these topics and not let them lay dormant, because they don't go away. They only sit there and they continue to fester and grow. Let me see if I missed any in the chat. So you can determine what's next. Yes, self-awareness. I love it. Thank you all for, oh, no, I did something else. All right, yes. So next slide, please. Do you think burnout can affect everyone? Put your response in the chat. Yes. Tangela said a big yes. Absolutely. Yes, I'm seeing yeses roll through there. Yes. It does not have a respecter of person. I don't care what your title is. I don't care how many degrees you have, how many coping skills you have. I don't care what it is. Burnout can affect any and everyone. Emotions roll down and up. Thank you, Tangela. Yes, they do. And it's the ebb and flows of life too. Like we go through different things. And like I may be able to ride this one wave, but this next thing that's coming may hit me a little different. And it depends on like how many waves have you rolled to shore, or how many waves are still rolling it and you're trying to get to shore. So sometimes it's like understanding where you're at and knowing, like, and I love that whoever put self-awareness. And it's so important for you to learn who you are as an individual and learn how things affect you and understand what your triggers are. Next slide, please. What are the signs and symptoms of burnout? What are some of the things you think are some of the signs and symptoms? You put some of them in there earlier. Overeating, not sleeping, exhaustion, drinking, not eating, all of those things. Absolutely. Those are signs of burnout. No patience, isolation. Yes. Very short fuse. Yes. I appreciate all the answers and the lack of boundaries being respected, misdirected, anger, frustration, all of it. Yes. And I'm going to be transparent too, because me in the state that I've been in, increased heart rate. The state that I've been in, I hit burnout. I would say throughout this pandemic, I probably hit burnout like 3 or 4 times. To be 100% honest. But high blood pressure, I've seen that as well. So like, as we're going through those things, we have to recognize and understand our limits and put a stop to it. Because sometimes we're like, okay, I got it. I can do this. I can move through it. And we come back in too soon. And it wasn't enough time for you to give your mind, your spirit, and your body rest. Can you go to the next slide, please? So some signs of burnout is mental. So you may have a lack of interest or motivation. You may become very forgetful, some hopelessness, some procrastination. Some physical signs is inconsistent sleep habits. Either you're sleeping too much, you're not sleeping enough, just exhausted. Have you ever just been sleeping, you wake up and then you wake up exhausted? Those are signs of burnout. Not wanting to go into work, getting sick when you pull up to work, getting sick at the thought of doing your job, frequent health problems. Like, so if you're constantly experiencing different things in your body, that could be a major sign of burnout. On the emotional side, anxiety or depression. So like, I like to say most of us kind of operate in some form of anxiety, especially if we're movers and shakers. We're always like, okay, I got to get it done. But when your anxiety is spiked and it's not coming down, or when you're like having super low lows, then that's something to look at and pay attention to. Being very irritable and angry, especially if you know that you're the type of person who is normally cool. You can move through things in a seamless manner, but you know that, okay, if this person looks at me wrong today, y'all might have to be escorting me out the building. It's a problem. If you know that you can't, a mask wearer, absolutely. If you know that you cannot hold your tongue in those points when normally you're able to, that's a sign. Having cynicism at work, just being cynical, nothing is okay. Just looking at things from a negative lens, negative perspective, like you don't see the good in the work, and chronic stress. And earlier there was something in here about apathy. So just empathy versus apathy, somebody put it in the chat. So having those moments where, you know, you're apathetic about the work that you do when you once used to love it. And now you're just like, okay, it's mundane. Next slide, please. And here are some more symptoms when we talk about symptoms of burnout, of work burnout. Like you're wasting time at work, like you just cannot get started. You're sitting there and you just cannot, like, the whole computer is sitting in front of you, but you don't even have the effort to type. For me, it's the notes. I can't, like, no, I can do this note in 5 minutes, but I'm going to try to do everything else before doing that one note. So lack of interest in work, a negative attitude at work, lack of inspiration, motivation, and creativity. So when you know that normally you're in there and you can do it and you have the inspiration, certain little things, everything gets on your nerves at work now. You're building resentments towards organization or coworkers, sometimes for no reason at all. Like any little thing bothers you. And you're looking at every small issue and making it into a bigger issue. Those are signs of work burnout. Symptoms of physical burnout, feeling an inability to take another step. Been there, done that. Like, I just can't move. I don't want to get out of bed. Everything is too much. Generalized pain or overly fatigued. Like you're just having aches and pains in your body that's unexplained. You haven't failed. You haven't ran into anything, but you're just in pain and you're overly tired. and you know that you're getting the rest you need. Avoidance of physical effort. So not even wanting to participate or do it. Injuring yourself easily when exercising. So like if you are working out and things, you just get injured, like spraying something really easily, or you step off of something and you twist your ankle. These are physical signs because your body is shutting down and it's not working the way it normally would. Injury isn't healing effectively. So if you know normally you can get back up and start moving again quickly, and it's prolonged, then those are signs of some physical burnout. Relationship burnout, and this is another big one that I'm seeing spikes in. Negative thoughts about the other person, disgust about their behaviors, just like stuff that didn't bother you before, like, oh my goodness, now he chewed too loud. No, I just can't take it. It's the little things that's bothering you. Thinking about if you would be happier without them in your life, starting to keep score. So weighing out like, okay, every time they do something, I'm paying attention to everything that's happening. Not wanting to contribute emotionally to the relationship anymore. Those are signs of relationship burnout. Symptoms of parental burnout. Yelling at the kids for things that you normally would have a little more grace and understanding for. Needing to take a nap during the day more than usual. Envisioning yourself like leaving and walking out the door. And this is something that I'm big on talking about, because a lot of times we don't talk about those aches and pains that we go through as parents. Like, we love our kids, but we may not always like our children, especially when they're growing up and they're going through changes themselves, like becoming teenagers. We know that stage of life is not cute at all. And then when they're young adults, that's a whole nother part of life. And so we don't talk about those things. And sometimes we feel guilty. And someone said in the chat earlier, guilty for saying no, but also guilty for like not having that great like for our children in those moments. We love them with all our hearts, but some of that behavior we don't like. And so those are natural and true feelings. Using screen time to distract our kids. So sitting them in front of a TV or giving them the phone and tablet when you would normally want them to do other things in the house, or you would create activities for them to do. And just feeling like you don't care about boundaries you used to have with them. So not just, okay, so if you had a chore chart for your children, and now you're just like, I'm just letting everything go. I'm not a lot, whatever. I don't even care. It's not even worth the fight. Those are signs of parental burnout. Next slide, please. What are the stages of burnout? And so this image like really intrigued me, and I was like, it's so real. It's so real to me. It's simple, but it's real. So sometimes we have those moments where we're like full and we can go and we got it and we can envision stuff and you're working at your highest level. But then, your battery starts to decrease, and like we still keep going. We keep it moving. We don't take the time to stop and plug and charge back in. And then we get to this point of burnout where our charge is about to go out. So when we continue, I'm going to talk about like this understanding like when we need to go in and begin to do some things a little different to continue to build ourselves up and to recharge and re-energize. Next slide, please. The 5 stages of burnout. So we have the honeymoon phase. It's when you're like that, where that brain had the full charge. That's when you're at your full charge. Everything is going good. Number 2 is like the onset of stress. Some things are waxing and waning. There's common stress that may be affecting you, but you can still keep moving. Number 3 is that chronic stress. And I see that as that middle brain that had like some of the bars were missing. like a market change in your stress level, more intense symptoms. So like when you start feeling those things in your mind and in your body, and things start to shift and change. And then number 4 is the burnout stage. Its symptoms, they become critical, increasingly difficult to cope, and it gets even worse. And that's the number 4 is that brain that had that 1 bar left. But then when we go to the habitual burnout, it's significant ongoing mental, physical, and emotional problems, where in burnout, you can start recovering, and you can kind of recover quickly. But in that habitual burnout stage, it's harder to come out of that. You need to do some real soul searching, or taking some time off and reevaluating to recover from that habitual stage of burnout. I had a question. So if whoever feels comfortable, raise your hand if you have had any of these, have experienced these signs. And if you feel comfortable putting in the chat, like now in your life, where do you think you're at on this scale? Okay. All right. You put habitual, like it's serious and it's real. Chronic stress. Well, you all are like in the right place today. Yes. And I love that you're not afraid to say it, because we really need to talk about these things, because it's real and it's live. Yes. 1, 2, 3, and then I start right back over. And so that means that you have something implemented in your life that you know that, okay, it gets bad and now I need to like reboot. And so that was what I wanted to talk about, because when I'm doing therapy with people, I always talk about, like if it's anxiety or depression, I talk about your window of tolerance. And I think when we're talking about your window of tolerance, that can apply to anything. So with your window of tolerance, there's something called it's hyper and hypo. So like if you're up here and it's really high, the stage is high. And I would say like that would be in your habitual burnout stage. And then the hypo is like the lower phase of it. So understanding where you're at in your window, and knowing like when I need to implement some coping skills or some self-care techniques, or I need to take that time to myself to reboot and recharge. So at what stage do you think, looking at the 5 stages, do you need to implement something so that you don't go to habitual? 4, okay. Anyone else? 3, 2. Venus is like, it's that, let's go. I need to do something so it don't go deep. I feel you. I feel you. What do you think prohibits us from doing that though? We know it. Look, I'm a therapist. I know it, but I'm not the greatest patient. What do you think that's within us that prevents us from doing it? You better say it. The superwoman syndrome. Taking time off to do something. Yes. Failure, self-realization. Oh, yes. Yes, yes, and yes. Yes, that superwoman syndrome is real. One of the workshops I'm going to do is going to be called Take Your Cape Off, because it's so important being comfortable doing things for self. Yes, we sometimes fail to do, and that goes back to, I think Lamicia said that, like feeling bad about saying no, but understanding that your no comes with a period, not a question mark, is very important. Being in a culture that doesn't support mental health maintenance, that's real and that's true. Absolutely. Because it's getting better. It's getting better, but it's not moving fast enough because we see the effects of mental health in our communities. And it's important for us to understand that mental health is real. Not feeling guilty to say, no, not today, I'm resting. Yeah, it's a me day. Absolutely. So we need to understand how to take care of ourselves because we cannot pour from an empty cup. If you have nothing to pour, who can you really help? And so that's why it's important for us to take care of us and not feel bad for taking care of yourself, because then you can be at the honeymoon phase. Like, I have everything I need for me. Now I can pour out. But then understanding that when I get to 2 or 3, I need to come back in and I need to take care of me. I need to give myself some of these beautiful things that continues to help build me up. Next slide, please. How to overcome burnout. And that image right there was so real to me. And it reminds me of a mask. So she's exhausted, but her head is down and she got fake eyes on, like, I'm woke, I'm here, I'm present, but I'm not. But how many times have we sat in Zoom meetings or sat in personal meetings and we're just like checked out? Don't know what nobody's saying. Everything sounds like Charlie Brown. Want. We've been there and it's exhausting. But then how do we overcome this? Next slide. Number 1 is tracking your stress levels. And how do we track the brain? Let's see. I'll have to go back and look at that. Tracking your stress levels. So how do you track your stress levels? And that's number 3, like creating a journal, having you a chart that say, like, today was a good day. I felt this, and expressing like why you felt that. Learning how to identify your stressors. What are the things in your life that are draining you? What's stressing you? And then ask yourself this question: is that mine? Because most of the time, we are carrying bags of other people. And sometimes we need to put those bags down that don't belong to us. And I'm very personable in my sessions. And so I'll just bust out singing, "Bag lady, you gon' hurt yourself." So sometimes we need to put those bags down because they don't belong to us. We're carrying the weight of the world. We're carrying the weight and the pressure of other people that's not even ours to carry. And so identifying what is yours and what's not yours. And when it's not yours, put those things down. And what your stressors are, what those stressors are is understanding, what can I do about it? Can I even do anything about it? Is it worth me? Is it worth me worrying about this right now? If I can't do anything about it, why am I wasting time and energy worrying? And teaching this stuff, it's a download for me as well. So I always keep myself relevant in these things because it's the download. So I get the download and then I can teach it, but it comes to me first. And I'm very transparent in my journey and in my walk because no one's perfect. This is not an isolated situation. We experience this. And I think if we bring more awareness to it, more people will be able to say, I'm struggling today. This is hard. I need help. I need someone to be able to talk to about these things. And so number 4 is seek professional help from a coach or a therapist. And so I have a coach. I took a break, but I have a coach. So coaching is different from therapy because a coach is one that will help you strategize. So if you know that, okay, I'm just stuck right now and I don't know what to do with all these visions and plans and my missions that I have in my life. And I know that there's greatness inside of here, but I don't know what to do with it. So a coach is someone who can help you strategize, put the plan in place, and move it forward. A therapist, we're going to help you deal with the stuff that's preventing you from doing the stuff that your coach is telling you to do. Because most of the time, that's some inward fear or something that's occurring within you that maybe it's fear, maybe it's like doubt, whatever it is. We help you process through those things, those hurts, those pains, the trauma, the generational stuff that may be there. So that's the difference between coaching and therapy. Build a support network. Even in the nonprofit world, in the business world, in personal lives, we cannot operate in silos. We need a support network. We need people who can understand where we're coming from, that can give us the unadulterated truth about ourselves, and we be able to take it. And as well, somebody you can just let your hair down with and be able to be truly authentically yourself. Because we know that as people, professional people, we wear masks. We're one way at home, we're one way at work, and not saying that we're not being true to ourselves, but we know that there is a professional side, there is a personal side. So having people in your life that can help you being transparent and truthful without ourselves can be very helpful. With ourselves can be very helpful, because it brings you to a greater awareness of who you are, what you need, and how you can change. Get enough rest and exercise. So very important. But I get it. When you are a mover and a shaker, the rest is kind of put on a back burner because you have so much to do. But also it's so important to be able to set those boundaries so that, like, I'm working from this time to this time. This is my rest time. This is my exercise time. This is my time to be a visionary and put things down on paper. This is my self-care time. So one of the biggest things is being very intentional about your days. So setting your schedule from the time your feet hit the floor. What is it that I'm going to accomplish in my day? So I have a friend who, number one, she wakes up bright and early. I'm not her, but I'm not a morning person, but she wakes up bright and early. The first thing she gets in her journal, she gets in her prayer, she goes to work out, and then her day starts. She has to have her coffee. So it's this routine that she does daily that sets her day in motion. So she's very focused and determined about what she's going to do in her day. And then shutting your day off at a certain time. So like we said, not getting enough sleep or not even being able to sleep. Learning how to shut your brain off at a certain time at night is very important. So like having that sleep routine. So if you know that if I'm not, because I know it's a window for me. If I'm sleepy between 9 and 10 and I miss that window, I'm up until 1 or 2. It's like that window, like, because it's just like, then I get a second wind and I'm just like, I'm buzzing through the house, or I'm like scrolling, or I'm like trying to find some research on something. But so knowing your body, knowing you're like, yep, when that sleepy hit me, I need to lay down. Speak up for yourself. The second win is too real. It really is. So learning how to speak up for yourself. So we advocate for everybody else, right? How about advocate for yourself? Be the best friend that you need to be for yourself. So learning how to speak up for you is very important. I think somebody put it in a chat. It's going to be a me time day. Learning how to shut your phone off without being afraid that something bad is going to happen. Taking that time to do what you need to do for yourself. Learn stress management techniques. And so I'll send an email and maybe they can forward it to the participants. Next slide, please. Also, it's very important to develop some coping skills. So everybody knows about breathing and meditating. So learning to take deep breaths. And I used to even be one that, oh, I breathe every day. I don't need to learn how to breathe. Breathing can like reset your entire body. It resets your system. So learning how to take those deep breaths and to relax. Embrace your five senses. One of the things I do on a regular basis is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What are 5 things I see to ground me, to bring me back into the space? Because when I start whirling and I'm like, okay, I need to do this, and that, and then I'm not doing anything because my mind is going like this, grounding myself and doing the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5 things I see, 4 things I physically can feel, 3 things I can hear, 2 things I smell, and 1 thing I taste. And when you're dealing with youth, they're like, I don't taste nothing. I'm like, put a piece of gum in your mouth. So what is that one thing that you can taste? And then I always cap it off with, what is one great thing about yourself? So that's one of my favorite techniques to do, because when we are sitting and we have so much going on in our world, in our lives, in our workplaces, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is one that grounds me and brings me back into the space that I am. Being in touch with your thoughts and your feelings. So understanding, being true and authentic with self. And like we said, when we keep pushing it down, an explosion is going to come, but we're just prolonging that explosion. So I would rather deal with it right here when it's not going to be a huge mess. So instead of pushing it down, dealing with it. What are those thoughts? Are they negative? Are they positive? How are those thoughts serving you? Because even if they're negative, sometimes those negative thoughts are serving us in some form or fashion, and it can be keeping us in a negative cycle. So addressing those thoughts that's coming and dealing with them head on. And so a technique that I use for negative thought patterns is taking it to court. Take it to court. What is the evidence for that thought? What is the evidence against that thought? And what would a judge say? So if the judge will throw it out, then we need to remove that thought. What is the truth about it? And being in touch with your feelings. So understanding, like, yeah, I'm sad today, because most of the time we know what's acceptable in our community: anger, happiness. Those are the 2. If we're sad, then we're looked at as weak. So we need to understand, like, get around those 3 things that we know. What are some of I'm frustrated, I'm irritated, what are some of the big angry words? I'm enraged. So just learning how to look at the emotions from a different standpoint and not viewing them in a negative light, because we have all of them for reasons, and they're indicators within our bodies as to why we're experiencing these things. And when you're able to experience, you're able to do something about it. So in everything, and learning how to not view things like everything is not a personal attack. And so that's another sign of high stress, when someone can give you a suggestion and you take it as an attack. That's a sign that maybe we need to correct a few things right now, because I'm hypersensitive to certain things that I normally wouldn't be. Next slide, please. It is okay to seek professional help. We care about our hearts, so why don't we care about our minds? So much focus is focused on physical health. Our physical health is very important, but we cannot be anything without our mental health. So if we lose our ability to think, to focus, to cope, it's going to affect our physical health. That's where a lot of health disparities come from, is that we're so much under stress. We have high blood pressure, heart problems, kidney problems, stomach problems, chronic pain. That comes from mental health unresolved. So our mental health is just as important, if not more important, than our physical health. And I might get flack for saying that, but I'm a firm believer in that, because if we take care of this, we can take care of our bodies. Next slide, please. Oh, before I end, I forgot to add this to the presentation, and I wanted to make note that there are two types of people that are typically, what am I trying to say? That are more, goodness gracious, that's more susceptible to getting burnout. And those are people pleasers and high performers. Why do you think that's so? People care about what others think too much. Always trying to meet that high standard. Absolutely. And giving yourself grace is very important. Learning how to treat yourself as you would treat a friend. And then we set that bar so high. Would we, for someone else, would we have that bar so high for other people? Mm-hmm. So we always hold ourselves to a higher standard. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns?
Thank you, Patrice. And if anyone has a question or a comment or concern, please put it in the chat and Patrice can address that. I want to also invite you all to visit Patrice's website at macbethconsulting.com, MCBEATH consulting.com. I will put a copy of that in the chat for you. Just give me a second here so that everyone has an opportunity to visit her website, maybe reach out to her, ask her questions or recommendations. I want to take this time as you all formulate your last comments and thoughts to say thank you to our sponsor, Humana Eye Care, and to Kurt Heminger, and most definitely to our guest speaker, Patrice Macbeth. Thank you for this rich presentation and information that I know we're all filled now as we walk away to finish the rest of our day. I want to thank all of you for joining us as well for this session of Conversation Wellness. To see this presentation again, you'll be able to visit us on our YouTube channel and our website at tmul.org. Let me also add that to the chat, tmul.org, to visit the Urban League for this session and any of our other services and support that we provide to the community. I want to invite you to join us next week. On next week, Thursday, at the same time at noon, we'll be having a conversation around sickle cell anemia, as September is Sickle Cell Awareness Month. And finally, before I let you go, remember that we have an election on Tuesday, November 8th. Part of our outreach here at the Greater Milwaukee Urban League is voter education and civic engagement. And so if you're interested in volunteering with us to help get the vote out, to remind people of their voter education, follow us on Facebook, take a quick snapshot of the flyer that is on the screen, and any questions that you might have before you connect with us, you can visit myvote.wi.gov. Patrice, thank you so much again for your time. Do we have any questions in the tree? Okay, everyone's thanking you, Patrice.
Thank you.
Including me again. This was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And I hope everyone takes a moment to visit your website and maybe circle back around with you after they allow this to really, process everything that you've shared with us today. A lot of the information we may have known, but it's so wonderful to get reminded of taking care of ourselves. I know one time when my daughter was graduating from college, and you can just imagine trying to get on an airplane and cross the T's and dot the I's, you know, the first one in the family to graduate from college. And then it occurred to me, I mean, talk about exhaustion, but it occurred to me as the flight attendant was saying, if the oxygen mask comes down, put it on yourself first before you help someone else. That was a big bell ringer for me. Yeah, take care of me so I can take care of others.
Absolutely.
So thank you for reminding us of that again.
Thank you. Thank you. It was an honor. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you all. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Patrice. Thanks, Faith.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Kurt.